Welcome to Power Brain, Power Life video interview series. The purpose of this is to, one, knock down some misconceptions about brain science and neuroscience and just your brain in general. The first big one is that our brains are locked at the age of 25, that we stop learning, we stop being able to pick up new talents. That's completely false. But more importantly, we know that brains are the most complex tool in the universe. They're constantly changing and learning and adapting throughout our lives. What we've learned in the last 10 years is just overwhelming, but there's so much more for science to explore. So really what we want to talk to is, how do we take all of this current brain science learning and apply it to our personal lives, our professional lives, our sports lives, whatever it is. So my understanding of brain science has helped me in my life 1000%, and I hope it will for you as well. Now, I am crazy excited to have Dr. Alexandros Psychogios. He is joining us. He's a professor of international HRM in Birmingham City Business School at Birmingham City University. His specialization and research interests are in leadership, neuroscience and complexity, and performance management. Now you know why he's here. He is the co-author of Neuroscience for Leaders, which we talked about in a recent episode, but there's so much more to cover. We wanted to bring in Alex for that. It's now in its second edition. If you thought the first one was good, the second edition, oh, mwah. He joins us live from Birmingham, England. So welcome, Alex. And as always, just really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm honored. I know that Nikos was here, my co-author, a few days ago, and you talked with him a lot of issues around applied neuroscience. So I'm here as well to try to inform not only you, the audience in general, about this exciting issue.
Excellent. Well, let's just start with the basics. A lot of what you talk about in this book is it's called BAL. That's brain adaptive
BAL.
Leadership, correct?
Brain adaptive leadership. It's the framework that we have developed. Practically, we have developed this framework in the first book, and now we have extended this framework with more insights from neuroscience and, of course, applied neuroscience in the leadership HRM field. It is the model that it is based on 4 pillars, actually, that all of them we call it. And of course, we needed a name. Usually, when we academics, we try to develop something, we need a name. So we suggested this as brain adaptive, in a sense, as you said initially, that brain, yes, can learn, brain can change. We have this magnificent idea of neuroplasticity in neuroscience based on that, which are the good news, actually. Practically, as I say to my class, the old saying that says you cannot teach an old dog new tricks, it's wrong. Actually, the dog can learn new tricks insofar as he or she wants to learn new tricks. Of course. This is exactly what neuroplasticity is.
So talk real briefly before I get into some specific questions. There are kind of 3 columns and then one theme that runs between the 3 of them. Do you want to go through very briefly how you have those broken out?
First of all, the 3 first columns, the vertical columns, refer to a previous theory, Tribune theory of the brain, developed ages ago. This theory tries to classify more or less the functions of the brain, the parts of the brain, not specifically the parts, but the generic functions of the brain in 3 parts. The first part is the primitive part, which refers to a brain that has a long life, millions of years. Okay, and it is the brain actually that it is very difficult to control, and the main target of this brain is to keep us alive. It is called the lizard brain, or the reptilian brain, or the primitive brain. You can find it in a variety of different versions. The second pillar refers to the midbrain, which is mainly linked to our emotional system, to our specific parts of, specific parts biologically of the brain, which allows specific emotions, specific moods that we feel during a day. And based on that, of course, they formulate greatly our behavior. The third part, the third pillar, refers to the newest part of the human brain, the neocortex, that it is the rational brain, as we like to say. This brain actually helps us to think, to make calculations, to make an analysis, as we like to say, to be able to compare, to be able to do something that we call cost-benefit analysis. This is a brain that we can, in a sense, control consciously, in comparison to the other two brains that are much stronger, though, that and cannot be controlled that easily, can be influenced, though. The horizontal now part of the framework, because we needed all these theories, okay, and it helped us to understand more or less, I repeat myself, because the things are not so simple inside us, inside our brains, I mean, can help us to understand how the brain functions. However, we were thinking with Nikos that we need something to connect the three parts. And what makes the human brain, as I like to say, actually human brain, is our coexistence. So the fact right now that we talk to each other, that we communicate, we exchange ideas, we provide and receive feedback from each other, it is essential, not only for the two of us, it's essential for our lives in general. So we call the last pillar as the relations that goes that goes across the three other pillars, and it is the pillar of the brain that everything can take place in parallel. This is what we were trying to demonstrate in our book through our arguments.
Absolutely, and thanks so much for that explanation. And you're right that those relationship, that strain really does connect them all. I kind of want to drill down a little bit on that middle column, the emotions, because specific to leadership, and I'll throw in the caveat that even though I'm just a typical corporate hack leader, when we talk about leadership, it's kind of the broader sense of leadership, civil leader, sports leader, community leader, not just, you know, someone cut from the corporate cloth like me. That said, there's an assumption that emotions and leadership don't always work well together. So walk me through that. How can we flip the script on that, so to speak, so that we're using them to support our leadership?
Let me tell you something which is one of the first sentences that we start the book. We say that leadership is not an art, is not a science, but it is a behavior. So every single behavior that we have, including leadership, requires emotions. You cannot see leadership, meaning you cannot see the interaction between two people, the leader and the follower. The follower could be plural followers, without emotions. Everything, when I'm communicating with you right now and you do the same, either you want it or not, either you control them or not, you communicate emotions. We communicate emotions through everything that we have, through our faces, through the words that we say, through the tone of our voices. So emotions, it is a critical part of our human entity. That said, you cannot separate it from leadership. If leadership is a behavior, as we strongly believe that it is, at the end of the day, leadership is not a given thing. You know, if you're a CEO in a company, it is a given, position is given. And of course, power is given. But leadership, that's a fundamental mistake that a lot of people do. Leadership is not given. Leadership can be gained. And how can be gained? Through interaction. Okay, the follower, in order to make a conscious decision to follow you, he or she needs to see this interaction, to feel this interaction. So this feeling process requires emotions. So I would say that, in contrary, leadership emotions are very, not just close to each other, are the same thing. Okay, so it is something that we strongly support. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love the idea that there's a difference between a title and then the actions of leadership. You're not a leader unless people you're heading people in a direction. It doesn't matter if it's your first day at the job or you're a 40-year tenured CEO. So in that, there's another kind of kernel in there that really goes to the relationship side, which is trust. So how does the brain with its mixture of the lizard brain and the rational brain, etc., how does the brain process trust through that kind of leadership sphere?
Well, that's a really very challenging question. Look, I'm going to answer from my main experience that I have, that is coming mainly from studying leadership and human resource management. I'm not a neuroscientist per se, okay? I'm a leadership and HR scholar, and I'm using neuroscientific evidence in order to support my findings. And of course, lately I'm also developed my own neuroscientific oriented projects related to leadership, of course. So trust is a fundamental part of the leadership process, but of course varies from person to person, from group to group, from culture to culture. That is something that we already know, and we know it very well, and there are a lot of evidence supporting this. If I can say something which is related to the brain, in order, the brain, first of all, we need to understand that by default does not trust. It's something that we cannot control, something that it is not very similar to ourselves. So the first reaction that we have to someone that we don't know, and this someone approaches, is with no trust. Imagine, for example, let me use this example that everybody will understand, that if I will approach a lady in a bar, you know, that doesn't know me, okay, for obvious reasons, definitely trust is not something that exists between this relationship. I need to develop it. I need to interact with her in order actually this trust to be developed. So trust is a dynamic entity. It's not something given. And what we need to know is our brain automatically will not, you know, just like that, click and trust the other person. So based on that, as a dynamic process, it is based on interaction. The brain learns through this interaction how to become more trustworthy, let's say. If I see that for X, Y reasons, I can trust you, I can rely on the things that you say, and especially on the things that you do, then automatically the brain, in a sense, stops to see you as a less trustworthy person and automatically passes to the other side. Okay, but it requires time, obviously, and requires, of course, effort, requires interaction in order to be done. But the first reaction, and this is something that it's not coming with surprise, okay, that the brain will not trust you because, you know, I'm an ex-person, that the brain needs time in order to trust others, to trust other brains, actually.
That's crazy interesting. So let me, real quick follow-up question. So I like your, you know, there's you and the woman at the bar. That's a great example. But then there's also kind of the flip side of that, or maybe two people who are meeting at a church or a community event. That trust might already be established just because of the construct of the organization. So how does a good leader, let's take an example of someone who's a leader at a multinational company. They are leading people who on the surface don't look like them, sound like them, have similar backgrounds. How do leaders break through that so that our brains find the similarities between ourselves?
What you said before, Matthew, which is absolutely right, is the context that we interact definitely will influence the level of trust that we start. For example, you refer to the context of church. Also, another context is the organization. If I know, for example, that I work for a particular manager, so I'm reporting to this manager and I see this person for the first time in my life, obviously, the context of the organization will define trust relationships, the typical, the basic trust relationship till a point. But my question is this the trust that we need in order to actually develop leadership? Automatically, it's a rhetoric question. Automatically, the answer is no. So the leader needs to go the extra mile, needs to do the extra things in order to be trusted. The same applies if I return back to you to your very nice example of the church. Okay, the church and the fact that we follow the same church or the same religion can actually give us a very nice ground to trust each other. But is this enough? And to what extent? And when we're talking about leadership, we need to understand that it's not, especially in an organizational context, it means that I need to influence my employees, to influence my team members in order to do something which is useful, which is good, to have a good performance, to reach a result. Okay, so all we need to work properly together. And this means that we need from time to time to trust each other, especially if it is a collaborative project, a collaborative activity, in order to reach the result. Of course, this is not something that can happen from the one day to another. It needs to be built, it needs to be developed step by step. The main thing that I suggest to leaders, to organizational leaders, because a lot of them, they ask me a lot of times, what can I do in order to develop trust relationships? For me, the beginning is the most important thing. And I say to them, you need to show first that you trust them in order step by step to be able to trust you. So who is going to do the first step? This is the moment that I say the first step should be done from the hierarchical superior person who in the particular place is in the particular example is the manager.
I love that. I love that. And that takes a little bit of from the leader side, a little bit of courage and self-confidence to show that trust.
Yeah, you need to show.
Switching gears a little bit, we've already mentioned the old dogs either wanting or not wanting to learn new tricks. But I think that continues to be one of the most fascinating aspects of what we're learning about neuroscience is that our brain, while it's fully formed around the age of 25, the connections are reconnecting on a constant basis through the rest of your life. So walk us through. It seems like there might be a little bit of a conflict in our brains around forming new habits. Technology is changing so fast. The speed of business is changing so fast. How do we leverage the strategic side of our brain that wants to be in the thick and making decisions and moving an organization forward with, I guess it would be the lizard brain who's like, wait a minute, I'm so comfortable right now. I'm alive. I had a meal. I had a good night's rest. I don't need anything else.
Our suggestion in the book is very simple. Avoid confusion and overload of information. We are living in a period of time, Matthew, that because we have tremendous access to information, all of us, or at least the majority of us, we have this, the neocortex brain is addicted to this information, and it wants, in a sense, to concentrate more and more information in order to have more data for the final decision that it needs to make. But the more we're exposed to information, the more information we ask and we require, and the more information we receive doesn't mean that we have the biological ability to analyze it. I'm not referring to decisions that are based, to big data analysis that we are using supercomputers in order to do so. I'm referring to the hundreds of decisions that we need to make consciously every single day about our professional or even personal contexts. Okay, in that case, the worst thing that we can do to ourselves and of course to our team of people that we lead is to push for more information, meaning that this information will help us take the right decision. Our suggestion is minimize this information, try to minimize options actually, and try to make a decision as fast as possible, because this can offer you two great advantages. First of all, to take the decision very fast, and second of all, even if you do a mistake with the first decision, still you have the time to apply corrective actions if needed afterwards. So the more you stay, I don't know how many of you, and this is the example that I use, how many of you have been in a super toy store with a kid and say to the kid, choose. The brain goes crazy because there are hundreds, thousands of options in front of the kid. And the kid jumps from shelf to shelf and from toy to toy, not being able to make a very quick decision what exactly he or she wants. But if you say to your kid, look, there are these 2 or 3 very nice toys, which one you prefer for Christmas, for example, as a gift that Santa Claus can bring you or whatever, the decision is faster in that case. Yep. And do you know what is the paradox? Even the choices are only 3 and not 100. There are evidence suggesting that the majority of the people taking this type of decisions are much happier with the decisions at the end of the day.
Huh. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I love it. Well, so far in our discussion, we've been to the bar, we've been to church, we've been to the dog trainer, the toy store. I'm going to take us in the time machine now.
Oh, okay.
If you were to leapfrog 10, 15 years ahead, give us an idea. I mean, you're on the kind of bleeding edge of the understanding of brain science and how it works in a very practical manner. Give us a look into what we could be expecting.
Well, a lot and nothing. First of all, my understanding is that the advancement of new technologies, medical technologies especially, help us to, especially neuroscientists, help them to read the brain, to understand how the brain functions. There is a big misunderstanding, first of all. The fact that we know how the brain works doesn't mean that we can control the brain.
Yeah, great point.
It's like, if I know how a piano, the music instrument is structured. The fact that I know how a piano is structured doesn't mean that I can play Mozart. Okay, it's exactly the same with the brain. So given that, in 10, 15 years from now, I don't expect a lot. Okay, right now it's very risky to do a prediction because you never know. But I don't expect a lot in terms of knowing more about the brain. Maybe we can have more things if a new technology arises that can help us to understand even better neuroconnections, the synapses between neurons and specific parts of the brain, how influence each other. However, what I expect to see in the next years, and this is what my research is related to, is to see a lot of applications of neuroscience, especially in the business sector. My sector or my field is to try to help both managers and employees, leaders and followers, to let me use the appropriate word, to play the game properly. Don't misunderstand my words, but
yes, absolutely.
To be able to interact in a proper manner, understanding that sometimes our reactions are not necessarily related to the fact that we are bad people or something else, but because there are things that we cannot control. There are hidden forces, as we like to say, that we cannot control sometimes. So what I expect to see is maybe more integration of neuroscience into the business sector, into the business management, business leadership sector. For example, one of the things that I'm working at the moment is to try to see how people can autonomously treat their stress levels by receiving biofeedback from devices, how they can actually manage their stress levels by themselves.
Yep.
Another implication that we also work is that we try to see whether we can help organizations identifying managerial roles inside the organization by relying on cognitive styles, analytic style, or focusing style, analytic and holistic style. So there are some of us, we have the ability to think more holistically. Some of us, have the ability to think analytically. So usually the people that they are thinking more analytically, they are good in specific jobs. Others that they are thinking holistically, they are better in different jobs. These are related to cognitive functions of the brain, the analytic and holistic thinking. Also, the other thing that we do is to try to think whether and how we can we can control the levels of cortisol. Cortisol is the stressor hormone, and it has been proved. We know, for example, that a lot of leaders, they have more testosterone levels in comparison to the average leaders. So we try to see whether increased levels of cortisol works as a moderator of this. So even though my testosterone is enough to act as a leader, at the same time I'm panicking very easily, I'm stressed myself up very easily. So this means that my leadership capabilities are getting lower because of that. So we try to identify these things, trying to help a variety of different people, but always, always, and I need to underline this because there are a lot of questions here, always following ethical considerations.
Okay. Absolutely. My as you might know, a lot of my background is in marketing. Those ethical, the more we figure out this gray area, no pun intended, the more the ethical considerations come up.
Yeah, there are a lot.
Alex, absolutely. I could not be more thankful for your time, for your information, for all this incredible research, and most importantly, kind of putting it in the context of how it works in our everyday lives, how we can improve our lives, improve our organizations, improve our companies. So thank you so much for the time, and stay safe. And I hope we can chat again very soon.
Yes, of course, wherever you like. Thank you so much for the invitation. I was honored, as I said, and happy to talk to you again with another similar issue.
Absolutely. And don't forget, the book is right there, Neuroscience for Leaders. Now in its second edition. Go buy it wherever you buy books, the indie store, the big store, wherever. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.